gender in governance. And in particular, I want to examine what are the public preferences for men or women in political leadership positions. Now, why are we going to examine this question? First, we know from other parts of the PAPI survey that women have different priorities to men. We know that women, for example, are more concerned with health, with hunger and poverty. They're more concerned with education. Men tend to be more concerned with road construction and national security issues. Women also tend to have lower evaluations of governance overall, and in particular, the dimensions related to participation and vertical accountability are lower for women than they are for men, suggesting that women are less likely to participate in local government. So the implications of this is that we need to encourage greater women's participation in local decision-making, which means that we need to have a focus on including more women in political office. And the reason for this is we know from other countries, when women are in political office or positions of political office, it's more likely to encourage women to engage with government. Women are much more likely to engage other women in government than they are men, and so increasing the number of women in politics is a good way to increase the level of participation that women have in politics. The question that we want to ask is, where do we need to increase the number of women in politics? For which position is it most important to increase the number of women? And the reason we want to ask this question is because Vietnam, as most other countries that are trying to increase the number of women in politics, Vietnam has focused most on increasing women's representation in the National Assembly. However, when we look at the overall patterns of representation in political office in Vietnam, we can actually see that the National Assembly is the best institution with regards to women's participation. Since 2001, about 26% of the National Assembly in any given year have been women. If we look at other positions, however, at the national and at the extremely local level, we could see much lower levels of women in political office. So for instance, in the Politburo, only 15% of the Politburo is made up of women, 9% of the Central Committee, provincial party secretaries, less than 1%, district party secretaries, 5%, commune party secretaries, 7%. And what I want to focus on today, and this is a finding that we revealed in the PAPI report, an estimated 12% of village leaders are women. So what we did to generate that estimation is we looked at all 800 plus villages that we went to and asked whether or not the village leader was a man or a woman. And we found that only 12% of the village leaders are women. Now I want to focus particularly on these village leaders because with regards to encouraging women to participate, village leaders really are the front line in terms of encouraging people to participate. They're the ones that organize the meetings. They're the ones that get people to vote. They're the ones that provide information on local governance. And so if we're going to try to increase women's participation, it's really these village leaders that we need to look at. And so what we're interested in is there voter bias, is there citizen bias against women holding these different political positions? And does that bias differ by by political position? And what we can find is when we ask citizens whether or not they prefer a man or a woman for a given position, we can find that the National Assembly, the People's Council, and the Commune People's Council, the issues where the government has put the most effort in terms of increasing women's representation, we can find that there's the least bias against women holding those positions. So only about 7% more people think a man would be suitable for a provincial People's Council position or a National Assembly delegate position than a woman. If we look to the village head position, however, we can see that there's a much wider disparity. More than twice the amount of people think that a man is more appropriate for a village head than a woman. So 16% of more people think that a man should hold the village leadership position compared to a woman. So voters are also more biased against women holding village leadership positions, in addition to the fact that there are fewer women in these positions in the first place. And so what are the implications here? So first we can find that women are underrepresented at all levels in Vietnam. However, women's representation in the National Assembly seems to receive the most attention. However, village leadership positions feature the greatest bias at the voter level, and they also have greater underrepresentation than at the National Assembly level. Village leadership positions are also more important than the National Assembly in the minds of citizens. Citizens find this to be the most important level of government, and these officials are also on the front lines of trying to encourage people to participate, particularly women. And so if we want to increase women's representation, and if we also want to increase women's participation in governance, looking for ways to encourage more women to take village leader positions is potentially the best path to improving governance for women moving forward. So that's the brief overview of the national findings for you. I look forward to hearing questions on this presentation or other presentations regarding the findings at the national level as we move forward. Thanks so much for paying attention.